All right, continue reading. Magnus Chase and the Gods of Asgard. The Hammer of Thor. Chapter 29. Alderman knew how to throw a party. He also knew how to throw things at a party. From the top of the staircase, we gazed down at a living room jammed with well-groomed elves in elegant white, gold, and silver outfits. Their pale eyes, fair hair, and expensive jewelry gleamed in the evening sunlight streaming through the windows. Dozens of hurdler servants moved through the crowd, offering drinks and hordes of hors d'oeuvres. And in all the cases and niches, their craftiness and minerals were once displayed. Piles of Avery's treasure glittered, making the whole room look like a jewelry warehouse after a tornado. Above the fireplace mantel, across a foot of Aderon's portrait, hung a gold hammer with the red letters, "Welcome, Magnus Chase, son of Frey," sponsored by the House of Alderman. And under that, a smaller print Hearthstone had been brought back. Not returned. Been brought back, as if the elfish marshal service had apprehended him and hauled him home in chains. Alderman himself circulated through the crowd at double speed, tossing gold coins at his guests, accosting them with jewelry and muttering, "Can you believe all this treasure? Amazing, isn't it? Would you like a golden choo-choo train? May I interest you in a dagger?" In his white tuxedo, with his wild eyes and brilliant smile, he looked like a diabolical person sitting pastries at Chev mass murder. I don't know what that means. His guests laughed nervously as he threw treasure at them. Once he passed, they muttered to one another, perhaps wondering how soon they could flee the party without seeming impolite. Alderman wove through the room, distributing gold trinkets, and the crowd moved away from him like cats avoiding an out-of-control rumba. Behind us, Ing muttered, "Oh dear, he's getting worse." Hearthstone sighed. "The ring is totally affecting him." I nodded, though I wondered how stained Mr. Alderman's sanity had already been. For decades he had been living off resentment, blaming Hearthstone for Alderon's death. Now suddenly Hearthstone had freed himself from that debt. Avery's ring simply moved in to fill the void of a whole bunch of crazy. Blitzen gripped the staircase with his gloved hands. This is not a good scene. He was wearing his bath towel baruka to protect himself from the Elfheim light. He explained to us that his unusual helmet, netting, and sunscreen would not be sufficient in this light, as he was still weak from purification. Still, the outfit was a little disturbing. He looked like a miniature version of Cousin It from the Addams Family. "Aha!" Mr. Alderman spotted us on the stairs and grinned even wider. "Behold my son and his companions. The dwarf, at least I assume that the dwarf's under those towels. And Magnus Chase, the son of Frey." The crowd turned and looked at us, emitting a fair number of oohs and ahs. I never liked being the center of attention. I hated it at school and later in Valhalla. I hated even more these glamorous elves onlooking me, and I was as though I was a delicate chocolate fountain that had just opened for business. Yes, Mr. Alderman cackled like a maniac. All this treasure you see, my friends, that is nothing compared to Magnus Chase. My son finally did something right. He brought me a child of Frey as part of his Wildergild's payment. And now this boy, Magnus Chase, will be my permanent house guest. We will start a line of photo ops at the bar. Hold up, I said. That was not the deal, Alderman. We've not staying past this party. Herstone signed, Father, the ring. Dangerous, take it off now. The crowd stirred relentlessly, not sure what to make of this. Alderman's smile eroded, his eyes narrowed. My son is asking me to take off my new ring. He held up his hand and wiggled his finger, letting the gold band catch the light. Now, why would he ask that? And why would Magnus Chase threaten to leave my house? Unless these scoundrels are planning to steal my treasure. Blitzen scoffed. They just brought you the treasure. You crazy elf. Why would they want to steal it again? So, you admit it, Alderman clapped his hands. All the doors in the living room slammed shut. Around the perimeter of the room, a dozen columns of water erupted from the floor, forming vaguely humanoid shapes like balloon animals filled with water, minus the balloons. Blitzen yelped, Those are security nukes. Nokks. Nukes. What? I asked. Also called nixes, he said. Water spirits. They're bad news. Herstone caught Ingern's arm and sighed. You still have family in woods? Yes, she said. Go now, he said. I release you from my family's service. Don't come back. Also call the police. Ing looked stunned and hurt, but then she glanced at the water spirits surrounding the crowd below. She pecked Herstone on the cheek. I love you, Herstone. She vanished in a puff of fresh, laundered, scented smoke. Blitzen arched his eyebrow. Did I miss something? Herstone shot him an irritated look, but he didn't have time to explain. Down in the living room, the older elf shouted, Alderman, what is the meaning of this? The meaning, Lord Mayor? Alderman grinned with an intensely that was not all sane. I now understand why you all came here. You meant to steal my treasure, but I caught you gold-handed. Security Noakes, subdue those thieves. No one leaves here alive. Elegant tip. If you're looking for the right time to leave a party, when the host yells, no one leaves here alive, that's your cue to get out of there. Elves screamed and ran for the exits, but the glass doors were shut fast. The security nixes moved through the crowd, changing shapes from animal-like to human-like to solid wave, enveloping the elves one by one, and leaving them passed out on the floor in elegant wet lumps. Meanwhile, Alderman laughed and danced around the room, retrieving his gold trinkets from his fallen guests. We've got to get out of here. And now, Blitzen said. But we need to help the elves, I said. True, with the exception of Herstone. I didn't think much of the elves I met. I liked the guppies in Avarai's pond more. But I also couldn't stand the idea of leaving 400 people at the mercy of Mr. Alderman, at his liquid nixes thugs. I pulled out my pendant and summoned Jack. Hey guys, Jack said. What's going on? Ooh, Noakes. Are you kidding me? There's nothing to cut these guys with. Just do what you can, I yelled. Too late, Herstone sighed. Violins. I wasn't sure if I read that last sign correctly. When I looked downstairs, half the Nixes had stationed themselves around the room in humanoid form and were pulling out solid violins and bows from, well, somewhere inside their liquid selves. That is weird. That seemed like a very bad place to store stringed instruments, but the Nixes raised the wooden violins to their watery chins. Ears, Blitzen warned. I clamped my hands to the side of my head just as the Nokis began to play. It only helped a little. The drudge was so sad and distant my knees wobbled. Tears swelled in my eyes. All around the room, more elves collapsed in fits of weeping, except Mr. Alderman, who seemed immune. He kept crackling and skipping around, occasionally kicking his VIP guests in the face. Wow. From inside the terrycloth hood, Blitzen let out a muffled yell. Make it stop or I'll die of broken heart in a matter of minutes. I didn't think he was being serious about that. Thankfully, Herstone was not affected. He snapped his fingers for attention, then pointed at Jack. Sword, cut violins. You heard him, I told Jack. No, I didn't, Jack complained. Kill the violins? Oh, that would be my pleasure. Jack flew into action. Meanwhile, Herstone fished out a runestone. He tossed it from the top of the stairs, and it exploded in midair, making a giant glowing H shape above the heads of the elves. Outside, the sky darkened. Rain hammered against the plated glass windows, drowning out the sound of the violins. Follow me, Herstone ordered. He clambered down the stairs as the storm intensified. Giant hailstones slammed into the windows, cracking the glass, caused the whole house to tremble. I pressed my hand to my waist, making sure the Skofnug stone was still there. Then I ran after Herstone. Jack followed from nook to nook, chopping up the violins and crushing their hopes and dreams of some very talented Nixie musicians. The water creatures lashed out at Jack. They didn't seem capable of hurting the sword any more than Jack could hurt them, but Jack kept them occupied long enough to reach the bottom of the stairs. Herstone paused and raised his arms. With a tremendous boom, every window and glass door in the house shattered. Hail swept in, plummeting the elves, hurtling all the servants and Nixes alike. Let's go, I yelled at the crowd. Come on. Fools, Alderman cried. You are mine. You cannot escape. We did our best to herd everyone into the yard. Being outside felt like running through a hurricane of baseballs, but it was better than dying surrounded by Noak's fiddlers. I wished I had the good sense to cover myself a bath towels like Blitzen. Elves scattered and fled. The Nixes rushed after us, but the hail made them sluggish, slamming to them and forming ice follies until they looked like slushies escaped from their big gulp cups. We were halfway across the lawn, heading for the wilderness, when I heard the sirens. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw emergency lights flashing as police cars and ambulances pulled into the main driveway. Above us, the dark clouds began to break up. The hail subsided. I caught Herstone as he stumbled. I almost thought it would make it to the woods when a voice behind us shouted, "Stop!" 50 yards away, our old friends, Officers Wildflower and Sunspot, had drawn their firearms and were preparing to shoot us for loitering, trespassing, and running away without permission. "Jack!" I yelled. My sword rocketed upward. My sword rocketed towards the cops and sliced off their utility belts. Their pants promptly fell around their ankles. Elves, I discovered, should never wear shorts. They have pale, gangly legs that are not at all elegant or graceful. While they tried to recover their dignity, we plunged into the woods. Hearthstone's strength was nearly gone. He leaned on me as we ran, and I had a lot of practice carrying him. Jack flew to my side. That was fun, he announced. Afraid I just slowed them down, though. I'm sensing a good place to make a cut just up ahead. Make a cut, I asked. He means between worlds, Blitzen said. I don't know about you, but to me, any of those other 8 worlds would be preferable right now. We staggered into the clearing where the old well had been. Hearthstone shook his head weakly. He signed with one hand pointed in a different direction. Anywhere but here. Blitzen turned to me. What is this place? It's where Hurst's brother, you know. Blitzen seemed to shrink under the mount of towels. Oh. It's the best spot, guys, Jack insisted. There's a real thin portal between the worlds right on top of that well. I can... ... Behind us, a shot rang out. Everyone flinched except Hearthstone. Something buzzed past my ear like a gnawing insect. Do it, Jack, I yelled. He raced to the well. The blade sliced through the air, opening a rift into absolute darkness. I love darkness, Blitzen said. Come on. Together we hauled Hearthstone towards peas in the wells, old lair, and jumped to the space between the worlds. Wow. But that's the end of chapter 29. But I caught something here that said they heard behind us a shot rang out. Everyone flinched except Hearthstone. Something buzzed past my ear like an annoying insect. Sounds like Hearthstone got shot. That was chapter 29.